This is part 2 of Denari's name segmenter training. We're picking up where we left off the last time. We've so far covered the classifications and how those filters work. We're going to continue on now by looking at the items here at the bottom. All of the rest of the filter options are included in these sections that are represented by these large blue bars across the field. We're going to start by clicking on the Giving Statistics field to expand that. And we see here we have several options. The first thing we're going to look at is gift amount range. Now before we head into this, let me just say a word. We talked about earlier that name segmenter filters on name characteristics, not gift characteristics. Yet here we are filtering on gifts, or so it seems. And in reality, what we're really filtering on here are not the gift information itself or the gifts themselves, but we're filtering on the giving characteristics of the donor. So in other words, these giving statistics, things like first gift, last gift, etc., are all filtering on the patterns of the donor. So they really are characteristics of the donor. So the first thing we're going to start with here is this gift amount range, and we check the box that says use gift amount range, and that opens up some fields for us. And we're going to skip the gift segment here for a second. We're going to move down here to calculation, and we'll choose to start with summation. Summation simply means that we're going to add up the donor's gifts and then apply some filter to that. And so when we do that, when we choose a calculation method here, we get some more fields, and the first one is low and high amount given. Now, a very common need is to get a list of names of people who have given, let's say, more than $500 in some date range. And so to do that, we would put in 500 as our low amount, and over here in our high amount, we're just going to put in a bunch of nines to kind of represent infinity. So here we're saying give us anybody who's given more than $500. In other words, add up their gifts. So if they've given 10 times and those 10 gifts add up to more than 500, they're going to appear in our output. We're also going to use a date range here. And so we're just going to type in, we'll say 11/2010, and over here we're going to put in 12/31/2010, and that will then give us this date range of last year. You should, by the way, anytime you use a year in the date here in Denari, you want to use the 4-digit date range. Now this filter here really represents a set. In other words, if you use any of these three, calculation, low and high amount, and starting and ending date, you have to use them all. They all go together. So again, now this gives us anybody whose total gifts gives us more than 500. Sometimes we just want to know, we want a list of people who've given anything last year. Maybe we want to send them a special letter or something like that. And so in the low amount field, we're just going to put in 1. You can't use 0 here. Sometimes people will use this and try to find people who haven't given anything by using the number 0 in these fields. 0 doesn't work because what's really happening here is Denari is calculating the statistical information based on the donor's giving habits or patterns, and then stores that giving information in a table called stats, and then we're now filtering on that information that's in that stats table. And so if somebody has not given anything, then they don't even show up in the stats table. We don't see them at all. So 0 is not going to work because if they haven't given, they're not there. But again, this is a fairly popular report that people want, or information that people want, so it's relatively easy to get here. Now under calculation, we also have other options. One is average. Average simply means let's take a look at the donor's gifts, average them in this date range, and anybody whose average is more than $500, put them in the output. We can look at maximum and minimum. They both work the same way. Maximum in this case says look at the donor's largest gift in this date range, and if it's more than $500, put them in the output. And then minimum obviously works the other way. It's looking at the smallest one. And then finally here we have count. Count gives us the number of gifts. So down here where we have low amount given, that's a little bit confusing because now it's really looking at the number of gifts, not the dollar value of the gifts. So one of the requests we always get is somebody will say, we want to get a list of all of our frequent donors. Well, the first thing you have to do is define what a frequent donor is. Is it somebody who's given more than 10 times in a year or out of a 12-month period? Is it somebody who's given 12 out of 12? You know, whatever that is for you, you have to kind of define that. But let's say it's just, we're saying here anybody who's given more than 10 times. And so that's what we're going to get. We're going to get a list of all the people who gave 10 gifts, no matter what the dollar value was, in this date range that we specify here. So, now, moving on, we look at first gift date. First gift is just the first gift that the person ever gave ever. So we have two date ranges and options here, and again we're going to skip the gift segment for the time being. But here we have the first gift range, which is a relative date range. So in other words, this just simply means relative to the day that we run it. And so if this works, you could just choose last year. And now we're going to say anybody who's given a gift last year, and because we're running in this this year, 2011, we know that it's going to give us the information for 2010. But there are times when this relative date range doesn't work, and so we can use these two fields to actually type in a range, kind of using the between operator to say between these two dates. And either one of those will work. Again, looking at the very first time someone gave. A lot of folks like to send a letter to somebody who gave for the first time last month or last year, or whatever that is. And so this is a helpful field to be able to do that. Last gift date range works exactly the same way, except that it's now looking at the very last time someone gave. So and that's going to change actually. So if somebody gave a gift last October, let's say, and they haven't given since then their last gift is over there in October. If they gave a gift in January of this new year, then their last gift becomes that January date, whatever that is. And so we're finding people then whose last gift falls within some date range. This gets used a lot and is very helpful to find people who have given in the past but haven't given recently. So for example, if we wanted to find people who have given last year but haven't given this year, we could here in this date range choose again either the relative date range or type in the date range, but we can now find anybody who we can put in the date range for last year, and that's going to tell us whose last gift was last year. If they've given since then, their last gift would have moved outside of that range of last year, and so they wouldn't show up in the output. But we want people who have given last year but not this year. So their last gift falls within this range of last year, whatever that happens to be. So again, that's a common request and relatively easy to do using name segmenter. And then finally here we have the largest gift range. That is simply looking at their lifetime giving. There's no date range filter here, just the lifetime giving, and we're saying give us a list of people whose largest gift is, could be 500 or to 10,000 or whatever you want to put there. But that's just again looking at the largest gift. Now it's important to remember that all of these fields that we're looking at, including the classifications, have an AND operator between them. Now there is an exception that we talked about in classes in and classes out. If you select classifications within the same category, there is an OR operator between them. But all of the other filter conditions in name segmenter have an AND operator. So for example, if we chose a classification and then we come down here in this gift amount range and we choose, we check our little box here and we say now give us anybody who gave more than 10 times. What we're really getting is anybody who has that classification that we selected and has given more than 10 times in this date range. And the more filters we add, each one of those carries an AND operator. So theoretically, the more filters we add, the fewer names we're going to end up in the output, because more and more has to be true. So we're saying this has to be true, and that has to be true, and that has to be true, and so forth. So we end up with a smaller list. One of the mistakes we frequently see people making is they put in filters thinking that they have to do that in order to get things out. But again, just keep in the back of your mind that the more you add, the more the fewer names you're going to have. Okay, we're going to stop here and pick this up in the next segment.